أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I begin in the Almighty God, most gracious, most merciful, and I seek refuge in the Almighty God from Satan the accursed. My name is Umar Abdullah. I'm the head of the Wajihatul Islami at Islamic Front, and today is the 15th of April 2019. And I'm here once more to speak of an issue that is amongst us, in our midst, and it's affecting us in many ways. A lot of comments and a lot of commentaries have been made regarding this particular issue, and I personally had issued a statement on this matter on the 29th of January, I think it was, this year. And after that, we've seen a number of commentaries, two of which I want to make particular mention of. One being commentary of Ralph Maraj, and we all know who Ralph Maraj is. And he more or less, said similar things to what I've mentioned in my release. And then we had the Commissioner Gary Griffith coming and raising serious concerns about the presence of Venezuelan nationals here and the move by the government to regularize these persons in our country, who a position that I support very, very firmly. And the Commissioner of Police does have some legitimate concerns there, real legitimate concerns, and I think I want to touch on those things a bit as well. But first of all, when this whole issue started with the Venezuelan thing, and I'd made my statement on it, much of you would have probably missed that release. So I'm going to attach that release to the description of this video upon completion, so you would be able to see what I said then back in January, 29th of January of this year. So when this incident was started, there was a lot of skepticisms about our position, Trinidad and Tobago's position as regards to their stance in relation to all of this. And we had the Prime Minister, Kate Rowley, indicating that he was holding a more or less neutral position on the issue. And he indicated further that he was in support of President Maduro. He recognized him as a president, and he's going to continue relations with him along those lines. But that isn't taking a neutral position. In no way that doesn't mean that he's neutral and he's not getting involved in the country's affairs and so on. Because on both sides of the fence we have two persons. We have Maduro on one side, and we have one Guaido on the other side. And you're definitely not on the fence. You're on the side of Maduro. So how can you say that you are neutral? That's not a neutral position. That is, on the side of Maduro, because you have indicated clearly that you have accepted him, and you continue to do business with him as usual. Being neutral would have said something differently. Perhaps I do not recognize, or I do not accept President Maduro as the president. I do not accept Juan Guaido as the president. And what I am calling for is for a free, fair election in Venezuela for the people to decide whom they want as their president. And then I am going to recognize that such person. That would have been taking, a neutral position in this whole issue. And, but further to that, it's confusing how the Prime Minister would would have come is coming forward now, and putting his position clear with regards to Venezuela, when in the past, while you were signing your agreements and negotiating with the Maduro regime in Venezuela as regards the gas and oil deals, you knew at that point in time that there was a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. There was a political crisis in Venezuela. And you, as the prime minister of this country, being so close to Venezuela, and, by all accounts, we are considered Trinidad and Tobago as part of Latin America. Conferences all over the world, when they have conferences that speaks to issues regarding Latin America and South America, Trinidad and Tobago are invited. I was one such representative in one of those conferences that was held in Turkey in 2014. So the point is, what did you, as the prime minister at that point in time, do to bring Maduro to account for what's taking place in Venezuela at the time? Did you, at any point in time, indicate a concern to Maduro that you enter into this agreement, and what negative effect could the humanitarian crisis and the political crisis in Venezuela, economic crisis in Venezuela could possibly have on our arrangement or on this agreement? Was that a question? Was that a concern of you then? Did you attempt to pull Maduro back in line? Stuart Young made a statement and indicated that, we respect the sovereignty of all countries. Respect the sovereignty of Venezuela. I agree that we should respect the sovereignty of other countries. But in the same breath, we should indicate that those nations ought to earn that respect. Likewise, they have to earn that respect. A country can say that they're a sovereign nation and they're violating human rights, and there's a lot of political upheaval in the country and economic problems in the country, and they expect that the other nations of the world are going to accept their position and accept the way that they're treating with their people and that sort of thing, and expect that nation is going to respect their sovereignty. Of course, but when you do those things, you deliberately affect your status as a sovereign nation, because a sovereign nation speaks to specific standard values that a nation must have in order to be a sovereign nation. And if those values are not recognized and those values are not adhered to in those countries, how can you say, or how can you respect that country, or you respect the sovereignty of that country? And this is something that I don't think has been taken to any much account in the discussions that was taking place and all the commentaries that was made and so on, except from a part that, when Ralph Maraj made his stance on the issue. And just recently we see the Commissioner of Police raising serious security concerns as regards to the presence of Venezuelan nationals here in Trinidad and Tobago, and the policy of the government as relates to that. So these are serious questions that we have to ask, and we deserve the answers, because we are a part of this country and we are being affected by what is happening, right next door, right? We're just 7 miles apart at the closest point. And, obviously, citizens from Venezuela coming into Trinidad, we have to be very careful of these individuals. And the Commissioner of Police made a very vital point. And that is, these individuals are coming here, have criminal characteristics about themselves. Recently, we had 5 murders. 5 Venezuelans being murdered here in Trinidad and Tobago, and they were not ordinary, murders like, attempted robbery, or as the case may be, they were actually involved with certain criminal elements in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's how they became targets. We are seeing photographs and photos and videos circling social media with Venezuelans holding high-powered rifles in their hands and posing and taking photographs in Trinidad and Tobago. What is happening here? And my simple suggestion is that, I applaud the efforts of the government to facilitate these refugees that are coming into our country, and we must have an open door policy as regards to other persons coming in from other nationalities seeking asylum or seeking protection and so on, and we must have a mechanism in place to offer to these individuals. But in the same breath, we have to be very, very careful as to whom we allow in our country and whom we allow to reside here in this country. So my simple suggestion is that why don't the government, keep all those checks and checks and balances, intact. Like when a person has to go and apply for a work permit, there's certain prerequisites, there's certain requisites that they have to provide in order to get that permit. All right. One being they have to provide a certificate of good character from the country from which they come. They also have to have recommendations from individuals in that country. They have to have a history of work history in that country, recommendation from their bosses in that country, their ex-bosses, and so on. All these things must have recommendations from persons in Trinidad whom you have come in contact with, persons who know you, and so on and so forth. Have these Venezuelan nationals have those documents. And just like how you have, varying, strategic places where these Venezuelans can go and access this particular ID. Similarly, they go to these places, present their documentation, and, have a committee sit and decide upon whether or not the recommendation or these documents, after checking and so on, that these documents are viable and this person is indeed a safe person to allow into our country. And this ought to be, this I think is a very important factor in allowing people to come into this country, and having them or giving them this amnesty, this 1-year amnesty, and so on. And I don't think the government is actually thinking out this in the manner in which that they should. And they are putting the Commissioner of Police in a very compromising position, because already the Commissioner of Police are unable to deal with the criminal culture here in our country, a country in which he understands the criminal culture because he's from here, all right? Let alone you're inviting a foreign criminal culture to come into our country. What are you doing to the Commissioner of Police? Are you setting him up? Are you setting him up for a fall? Are you setting him up to fail? Look at what is happening in this country. And crime in Venezuela, it's not like crime in Trinidad. I was in Venezuela. I knew when the crimes Maduro was committing from 2014 to 2017. I was there when the protest was taking place and people were actually killed, executed in those protests. The government would employ, criminal gangs to go into these crowds and shoot randomly and kill innocent people in the crowds, most of whom would have been young university students and so on. From 2014 to 2017, we had probably over, 8,000 executions in Venezuela. We had, 12,000 people arbitrarily being detained in Venezuela. About 1,200 people we had, 1,300, 1,200 people we had locked up in prison, political prisoners. Our 5 nationals was there in that political prison, and we have instances where judges were jailed, detained, arrested. One of the judge who was presiding over the matter of our 5 nationals had indicated to our 5 nationals in one hearing that he would see to it that they got a terrorism conviction, and he would put them away for 12, 25 years, I think, something around that figure. And he was presiding over another matter, a drug matter, where he had locked up, or give the order to convict a drug baron there in Venezuela, whom was suspected to have lucrative ties with some of the ministers in the government there in that Maduro regime. And when the sentence was handed down, he was immediately arrested and locked up in the very same prison where our 5 nationals was locked up. All right. So how can you, as a prime minister, sit with a man like this, knowing fully well what is happening in that country, and greedily, if I may use that word, negotiate an agreement with this man pertaining to oil and gas? Where's your values? Where's your consideration of, the plight of the people here in this country, and what may possibly happen as a result of this ill-perceived, gas deal? I don't think that the Prime Minister is thinking clearly on this matter, and he ought to be seriously, receive some good advice from his advisors as to the position he should actually take, and what fight or what should he be asking for. And all world governments should be lobbying and trying to influence, the regime there in Venezuela to call, elections, and have, some independent or international observers to come and observe the elections and make sure that the election is free and fair. And whosoever comes out the winner, whether it's Maduro, Juan Guaido, or whosoever comes out the winner, all the world leaders and world the countries ought to accept that person as the president of Venezuela, and proceed as normal. But that is not happening. We see where America is bullying their way into Venezuela, and we all know it's because of the massive wealth that Venezuela has in natural resources, oil, the largest oil and gas reserves in the world, and we have the diamond fields, we have the coal mines, and so on. And there's so much to benefit from this country, and America has no right to be meddling in the affairs of Venezuela. They have no right in casting these ridiculous claims and promoting Juan Guaido, and pushing him forward for the presidency and all of that. And Juan Guaido, I hope he gets this message that he's making a very serious mistake by allowing America to by accepting the support of the Americans and accepting the support of those countries that are pushing him to become the president of Venezuela. Because once he becomes president of Venezuela, that is going to end whatever legitimate stance that Venezuela had on Western policy. And I think that is going to be a very negative blow to the Venezuelan people, the Venezuelan economy, and also the Venezuelan government. And that is going to change the whole dynamics of what is happening in this region. Not just in South America, but within the Caribbean region as well. And I think we have to pay particular attention to these developments, and we have to come out and seriously condemn what America is doing and their interference in Venezuela. And Prime Minister Rowley still has some space in which he can maneuver and influence that type of change and that type of argument and that type of policy. But for some reason or the other, he has trapped himself in a particular position, and he can't seem to get out of it. But he can. and he has to take the advice of people who know better and who understands this thing better than him. Apparently, the government of Trinidad and Tobago are very, very poor in negotiations. They're very, very poor when it comes to international affairs. They're very, very poor when it comes to negotiating with foreign entities and so on. And I think they should leave that up to the experts and people who know how to relate on the world stage and how to communicate on the world stage. And they should, seek out all the advice that they can get in this regard. So, again, I don't feel empty. I don't feel, I don't admire the position that the Commissioner of Police has found himself in at this point in time, and he really, really has a task on his hands that is going to prove to be the most difficult task that any Commissioner of Police in this country would ever have, and I'm cautioning him to be very careful, to be very cautious the way he deals with the situation and how he moves forward. And I applaud him for the statement that he made and the concerns that he raised, because it is a very serious concern. Right now in this country, we have a major part of our workforce are Venezuelans. And the government doesn't seem to understand that what they're creating is it's going to create a negative backlash on the economy, on our citizens in this country, because Venezuelans are working for under minimum wage. They're willing to work for that, and they're working twice as hard as the locals. And you hear some of the businessmen and contractors speak about these Venezuelan workers. They're getting rid of the local workers and they're hiring Venezuelans because it's costing them cheaper. One businessman in particular, one contractor, as a matter of fact, built a building in Gulfview, and he was boasting that initially when he had contracted a local contractor, hiring local labor, it was costing so much money, and he went ahead and did the construction on his own, employing Venezuelan workers, and it cost him a third of the original price that was asked. So is that a positive for Trinidad and Tobago? Because what is happening now is that none of our Trinidadian and Tobagoan nationals would be able to compete with that. Because if you hire Trinidadian and Tobagoan, then you're going to have to pay them at least the minimum wage for unskilled labor. All right? We're not even talking about skilled labor, because that's a whole different bracket. You're going to have to pay NIS for these and pay and all these deductions that you have to pay for the workers here in Trinidad and Tobago. But the Venezuelan workers, you don't have to pay those things. You don't. All right, and this is something that I don't think I've been hearing enough of in these discussions. These concerns are not being raised. If perhaps there is some mechanism by which the private sector, the contractors and so on, they're forced to pay these Venezuelans at least minimum wage and equal pay, just like how you pay the locals, at least it will give an incentive to the local workers, our locals, to up their game in terms of production, in terms of productivity, in terms of commitment and all of that to their jobs, etc., etc. So it will create a healthy, competitive atmosphere. But what you have now, it's not a healthy, competitive atmosphere. That's not what you're creating, because no businessman is going to want to pay more for a job that he can get someone to do and pay less. No businessman is going to do that, right? So it's all about the money. It's all about the dollar. And we have to be very careful. The Trinidad and Tobago government is stepping in the wrong direction. They're moving in the wrong direction. They're not doing what is necessary to protect their citizens. They're not doing what is necessary to safeguard their citizens. And they're not doing what is necessary to safeguard our economy. Because and by all accounts, if the government continue to go down this path, what they're continuing to do, and the middle class in this country is removed, like how it was done in Venezuela. There's no middle class in Venezuela. There's no upward mobility. There's no downward mobility. Who is poor in Venezuela is poor. Who is rich. That's not going to change. The same thing is going to happen here. And I've been talking to some individuals, and they're saying apparently it's already happening. The middle class is being eroded. It's being removed. Could you imagine when that happens here in this country? What is going to happen? So, I mean, I'm not one of those economic pundits, and I'm not one of those, learned person who have gone to university and studied these intricates, these issues in an intricate manner and in that manner. But, from my experience and what I've been experiencing over the years and my direct involvement in policies, in looking at policies and testing these policies, I have a lot of experience when it comes to these things and understanding and foresight. And this is something that the government, lacks in this country. And they're putting the Commissioner of Police in a very compromising position. And I'm fearful that the Commissioner of Police, if he's not careful, he may, break under this pressure in terms of, not physically break, but, he may be forced to make decisions that is not probably, right for the people of this country and right for this nation at all. So, these are things that we have to be very, very careful of. So my position is that, if the Prime Minister wants to hold a neutral position as regards to this is what he needs to be calling for. He cannot no longer be negotiating with this man and continuing to deal with this man when you had the opportunity during 2014 to 2017 when all these atrocities was taking place in Venezuela against the Venezuelan people, and you knew this was happening. You knew this would have been something that would have negatively affected this gas deal. Where was your thinking? What was your mindset? We have the situation where I was just about to make a point. It completely slipped my mind. But anyways, this is a very serious issue, and we need to raise our voices. We need to raise these concerns, and we need to talk it out loud. The government needs to hear what is affecting us. All right, these criminals that are coming into this country. How can you? All right. I heard the Faris Alwari. He's appearing to be very ridiculous in his utterances. Quite recently, he's proving himself to be a dunce when it comes to to law and when it comes to the rights of our people in this country, and really fulfilling his role as the Attorney General in this country. If these persons are caught, and I heard Gary Griffith said it, and Gary Griffith said it after him, that once these persons are caught and they're found to have criminal records or etc., they'll be deported back to Venezuela. Come on, let's be serious. Let's be serious here. These people, whatever little time they would have spent here, would have already created a connection, but with criminal elements here in this country. As a matter of fact, before they came here, they had created such connections. Coming here would offer them the opportunity to cement those connections. Not so? I remember some years back, I had approached ACP Archie and told her I had spoken to the special branch about it. And I also approached ACP Archie. The drug interdiction unit, the TTPS, I can't remember how they're called. I had approached them as well and spoke to them concerning it. There was this Venezuelan national, right, who wanted me to, well, how it all happened was that I had a friend here And the friend knew this man by I don't know, randomly, dealing with people and so on. So, came across this guy, and this guy wanted to establish some connections with someone here to buy his drugs that he was bringing in from Venezuela. So the person, spoke to me about it, and I told him, I said, well, I had an idea, and I told him, well, why don't you tell him that I'm going to link him up with the person? I can do that. So my intention was, if he had bought into that, I would have gone to the police and set up a sort of a sting operation where, over a period of time, they would have monitored these communication and transaction and so on, and eventually they might have caught on to the big fish. So when I told them to do, they went back to the individual and they had that conversation with him, and he agreed that he would meet with me, and I would put him in contact with someone, right? But I don't know nobody. I don't know the big fish. I don't know who are the people who are the big players in this thing. So obviously I went to the Ministry of National Security and these different agencies that I spoke of, and ACP Archie was the last person I spoke to about this and told her about the incident and so on. And I was telling them, we have a golden opportunity here. We can set something up, and we can target it. You are the persons you all knew or knows who are the big players in this industry. Let me give him a number. Let me spark an introduction between him and that person, and let's see how it's going to go. Let's follow the money. Let's follow, the communication. So I never got a response from the ACP Archie. Never got a positive response from the other agencies, and so that man was left to continue, his trade. He was bringing in his stuff. One such person he had a fallout with was the cousin of, Roger Alexander in Sandy Grande, and a guy by the name of Scott. And, it was often told to me that nobody can touch this person because, Roger Alexander is his cousin and that kind of thing. Which is one of the reasons why I'd raised such a serious concern when the Commission of Police reinstated Roger Alexander and so on. And they had some transaction, and this man, Scott, he was owing him, this individual was owing him a set of money. And, he wanted someone to collect that money for him and all of that. At one point in time, I knew he went and he bought $50,000 from a businessman in South, right? And this businessman apparently had this $50,000 just lying around when we were having problems in accessing foreign exchange. So you can well imagine, right, what is happening in this country, what has been taking place in this country. And there was never an effort of the state, of the security forces, to address this matter when I brought this matter to them. All right? And that's just one incident. All right? And there are lots more. There are lots more. Right? So, who are we kidding? When we find them, we're going to deport them back? When they already have the connections here? And the next day they're going to come back to Trinidad on a boat? Come on. We're playing games here. We're not really serious. So we have to put these mechanisms in place. That process of applying for a work permit and the necessary documents that you must provide, right? 7 copies of each document must be provided. Imagine that when you're going for a work permit. 7 copies of your certificate of good character, 7 copies of your recommendations, 7 copies of this, 7 copies of your resume, 7 copies of this. Come on. Why are we doing away with that? Let's keep that intact. Let the Venezuelans bring it with them when they're coming to register, and let that be a part of their application. But just, fast forward the application in a manner in which that is going to facilitate the numbers that are going to be coming in. We have to be serious. We have to be very careful of how we allow into our country. Already we have, we have the Chinese nationals here. We have them doing a number of things here. We have so many Chinese groceries all over the place, Chinese restaurants and gambling houses and so on, going under the banner of a private club. Are these people being monitored? What mechanism are in place to manage the influx of Chinese nationals in this country and their business operations in this country? Is there any mechanism in place? There is none. There is none. So already we have a failed situation there, and now we're going to create another situation that's going to fail us. Already we're going to do that. And why is the government taking this particular path? Why are they doing this? Because because of this gas deal. With watery mouths, you're running to this, to this man and trying to negotiate and trying to appease him and trying to let him know, oh, we are taking care of your people and we're doing this and we this. Come on. Where's our values? Where's our principle as a sovereign nation to protect our citizens, to protect our economy, and to protect this country? Of course, I'm all for the idea of welcoming these people and providing some sort of relief for these individuals. I'm all for it. But you must put a proper plan in place. You must have a proper mechanism in place to filter out the bad. You must have that. And crime in Venezuela, like I said, it's not like crime in Trinidad. On a normal day in Venezuela, a normal day in Venezuela, we have the riot squad on every street corner. You can't walk with your cell phone on the streets in Venezuela. You're going to be robbed. Your smartphone, you're going to be robbed. When you're sitting in a taxi with your smartphone, the driver will tell you sit in the center of the back seat. All right, because the taxis is not like the taxis here where they wait and they full on the stand and then leave. When you take a taxi in Venezuela, you hire an entire car, like in New York. All right, and they tell you it's sit in the center of the back seat because the motorbike, there's a lot of motorbikes in Venezuela, so the criminals will come with the motorbikes, drive alongside the car, bust the car glass, take your phone and go with it. There's something called express kidnapping in Venezuela. Whilst I was there, 7 diplomats from the varying embassies were kidnapped. And the express kidnappings is like, they ask for just the amount of money that you would have to pay them to release the person that was held captive. So these embassies would have, in the vicinity of 5,000 US, 15,000 US in their safes and so on. And they would ask for that amount of money and they pay the money and they would release the diplomats. Express kidnapping. All right, similar to what took place recently with the Trinidad nationals, and they settled for, I think the report said the KFC and some US dollars and cell phones, etc., etc. All right, that's all they want, right? Because, a couple of US dollars in there, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, all right? Right now, a small cup of coffee in Venezuela, this size, is 7,000 bolivares. 7,000 bolivares. When I was there, a cup of coffee was just about, I think it would have been 20, 25 bolivars, 30 bolivars. And look at the price of the coffee now. So, again, we have a government in this country, and past government as well. They have shown very little, how to call it, very little skill in the way they respond and negotiate with other countries and so on. Their diplomatic efforts are very questionable. The way they use diplomacy here in this country. And it's ridiculous to think what is happening now. And, everything has broken loose from its stable. We're going to have a very difficult time to bring this country back to where it was at one point in time. A very, very difficult time, and we're gonna need the efforts of all entities, every single agency, every single organization in this country, every single religious group in this country to come together, put our minds together, put our heads together, and let's try in our own capacity, in our own little circles, in our own spaces, to do what is necessary to alleviate the problems that exist within our communities. And little by little, we're going to see everything just coming back together, meshing themselves back together, and weaving itself back together, and creating this beautiful country that we once enjoyed. Imagine 5 individuals shot, 1 killed on the Maracas beach. That's a tourist hub. That's a tourist hub. Look what took place in Chaguaramas. We had a shooting inside of Chaguaramas as well. Another tourist hub. What is happening in this country? What is exactly happening in this country? So, these are very, very serious issues, and I think it's something that the Trinidad and Tobago government has not been has not been advised properly. They have not sat and really looked at this matter in an intricate manner, and in an in-depth manner, the way they should have looked at it. I don't think that they have enough discussion was held with the different stakeholders, and one of those stakeholders are the nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, the people of how it is do we feel about this move by the government in giving Venezuelans a free pass for 1 year. Did they go to the communities? Did they have discussions with the people in the communities? Did they seek advice from the communities on what communities have to offer for these nationals that are coming into Venezuela, and how these communities could have worked with the government to achieve the objective that we wanted to achieve? Nothing like that was done. Where is the element of experience with some of these government ministers? You mean to say that they have not earned or learned any, gained any experience over the years being a politician, working and addressing the needs and, concerns of people? It's really sad. It's really, really sad. And it's not going to get better if they continue along this path. It's going to get worse. And I think it is important for us to reject this policy of the government and the process that they're using to regularize these Venezuelan nationals here in Trinidad and Tobago. And, they have to put a more stringent measure in place. They need to have more discussion with the communities where these Venezuelan nationals are going to end up. And those discussion has to include suggestions from the community, how it is, or what they could possibly put in place to absorb these individuals within our communities and our society. We have the religious groups, we have these Venezuelan nationals that come in here, a lot of them, they have the Catholic faith, Anglican faith, that sort of thing. What is the Anglican body? What's their role in all of this? What's the Catholic Church? What role are they playing in all of this? I see recently there was an advertisement where there was a news bit, I think I saw, where the Archbishop was facilitating education or schooling facility for some of the Venezuelan children, nationals, and so on, which is good. And this is the kind of this is the kind of cooperation that is needed across the board. But the government has to initiate those discussions, and they has to come to the community and have those discussions. This type of election type knee-jerk reaction to what is taking place right now, it's definitely going to hurt us, and it's going to hurt us in ways that we would never be able to recover. I am serious about this. I am very, very serious about this. All right. So, I would leave it there. Like I said, just to reiterate, I'm in 100% supportive of those comments that was made by Ralph Maraj. I'm 100% in support of the Commissioner of Police and the concerns that he have risen. And I don't envy him. His position as Commissioner of Police had become more difficult now. Like I said, he was already having a difficult time, a challenging time in dealing with our crime culture here. And now to have a foreign crime culture to be dealing with, it's even more challenging. And it's not an English-speaking country we're talking about. It's a Spanish-speaking country. A lot of police officers, a lot of government agencies, the workers and so on, they don't speak Spanish. Language barrier is going to be a serious, serious problem. So as nationals of this country, as a citizen of this country, I am calling on everyone to stand up to this regime, this government, and say no to their policy. Say no to the process. Say no to what they're attempting to do, because they are going to create a platform. They are going to create new avenues by which corruption are going to be widespread. Bribery, you name it, is going to happen. It's going to happen. We're seeing already where police officers are suspected of being involved in human trafficking. We're seeing it already. We are not dealing with the problem. We are creating bigger and huge problems that we would not be able to deal with. Already I'm very concerned about the Commissioner of Police and whether or not he is capable of dealing with what the government is going to introduce here in this country. So if there's any questions as regards to my comments that I've made here in this video, any concerns, please don't hesitate. My number is going to be available. You can call me anytime, any day. It doesn't matter. 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30, 3 o'clock, I answer my phone calls. I take all my calls. I don't screen my calls. If I miss a call from someone, I return the call. All right. I'm very, very easily accessible. And, you can ask your questions. I'll try in whatever way, the best way I can to answer those questions and to try to give more clarity to what I've said and so on. So, like I said, let me leave it there. If I've made any serious errors or serious mistakes in my in my speaking, I ask God Almighty to forgive me. I ask you, the people, to forgive me and to be at patience with me. I'm not perfect. Like everything else, every day is a learning experience for me, and I try my best to be as fair and as just as I can, be as open as I can, apply good principle, and adopt and develop good values. I'm all about that. I'm all about change. I'm all about accepting wrong when I'm wrong, and listening to others, point of view, and respecting others' views and values and so on. So, I pray that we as a people in this country would start opening our eyes and stop, behaving like the ostrich you know, putting our heads in the sand and, you know, acting as though nothing is happening and nothing is affecting us and so on. So we have to, this is a very serious concern for us, and it's our future generations that's going to be affected if it manages to miss us. It's certainly going to catch on to our future generation and our children, our grandchildren, and so on. So we have to preserve this country. We have to preserve our people. We have to preserve our values. We have to preserve our country, our economic status. We have to preserve our good governance, and we have to demand good governance, because there isn't much to preserve what we see before us. You know, we need better governance. We need a more just and fair, you know, system of governance in this country. And we have not seen it over the years. It has been all eroded, destroyed, compromised, and so on. We need to bring back that. We need to call everyone to account for their roles and function in this country. And we should not stop at it. We should continue to raise our voices, use every method possible. All right? So take care until next time. You know, like I said, I'm easily accessible. I can be reached anytime, any day. Thank you for listening. Take care.